Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about a beast build that I think is very fun and I got requested to make a video on because it looked like a really fun build for other people. Now beasts, when Age of Wonders 4 had just come out and it was a new game, they were very overpowered and they got nerfed into the ground. So here we are 2 years later and the devs are giving them a complete facelift to bring them back into viability and to be a lot more fun and interesting to play. These changes are currently in the Griffon Update Beta. This beta has all the changes to the base game that will go live along with the Archon Prophecy expansion next month. You can access this beta at any time. I need to say that though because some of these changes might not go live. I'm pretty confident most of them will, but I'll try to show tooltips and anything like that to ensure that you guys, like if anything's changed, you can be like, oh, it doesn't look like it does for me. But if too much changes, I'll just make another video, but this should be pretty good. This is the strongest beast build. Well, actually might not be the strongest beast build, but it's certainly a very strong beast build. We're going to do this video in two parts. First, we're going to talk about the changes to the tomes that have enabled this build to actually be strong and actually work. And then second, we're just going to talk about the build itself. If you just want to see the build itself, and you're not interested in hearing me talk about cool, interesting stuff for some reason, then just sort of skip ahead when we're actually looking at the faction creation screen. But for now, let's talk about the Tome of Beasts. The Tome of Beasts has been bad for a very long time. Again, since the game came out, it got nerfed into the ground. So the developers have made a couple changes to the Wild Speaker and to Call Wild Animal. It used to be called Summon Wild Animal, now it's called Call Wild Animal. The Wild Speaker, when the game launched again, was he was very overpowered, actually. He was insanely overpowered. He was extremely overbearing, and he was just generally considered way too much for everybody. He has since received four, I'm looking at it on my other screen, he's received 4 different buffs that have made him significantly more powerful. Number 1, Conjure Animal is now on a 4-turn cooldown rather than just once per battle. Now, it still only lasts for 3 turns, including the turn you summon it, so you can't just create infinite animals on your side of the field, but this does mean that if the battle drags on, or if you're fighting tanky enemies, or if they're kiting away from you, that the Wild Speaker doesn't just chase people around with a 14 damage attack, doing basically nothing. If the battle continues for a while, he can Conjure Animal again. And as you saw, probably right here, Conjure Animal now enters defense mode after use. Now, these two changes as a whole have made Wild Speaker significantly more powerful. Now, why is that? That's because when Wild Speaker enters defense mode after conjuring an animal, he goes to 3 defense and 5 resistance. This turns Wild Speaker from a squishy little support unit that for a tier 2 support, he's squishy even for a tier 2 support, and supports are already kind of squishy. So he tended to just get eliminated immediately after conjuring an animal. Now, the Wild Speaker can run up to an enemy and conjure an animal directly in their face, because if they do try to focus him on the next round, he will be in defense mode and therefore be significantly more difficult to remove. This also allows him to use animal kinship more effectively, because he can run up to an enemy and summon the animal right in their face, and then because he, with this minor race transformation, will be directly adjacent to the animal, at that moment the animal will do significantly more damage. So that just kind of makes the Wild Speaker the Wild Speaker now makes way more sense in this build. He just makes way more sense as a unit. In addition to that, the third change is, well, actually there's 4 changes, but the third change here is that the Conjure Animal now gets enchantments, which I didn't realize he didn't do. The Conjure Animal used to apparently just not get the enchantments from your faction, and now he does. This means that the animal does significantly more damage and gets the Vigor enchantments, Tome of Vigor enchantments later on. So Wild Speaker scales way better because him and his Conjure Animal will get enchantments. That's like double the enchantments. And actually, no, there's been 5 different buffs. I forgot there's 5 different buffs. Anyway, Wild Speaker scales way better. He's way more effective, way harder to remove from the battlefield, and way just more difficult. So the 4th buff is Unleash the Beast, which has now gotten 2 regeneration. Unleash the Beast was an okay ability, but to use your entire turn just to give killing momentum and strengthened often didn't feel that good. Killing momentum in the beta has been nerfed. After you proc killing momentum, your charge will reset, meaning if you run up to an enemy, kill them, your next charge will act as if you didn't move. So that kind of nerfed killing momentum. So this is sort of a compensation nerf, but in addition to just being a compensation nerf, it means that the Wild Speaker now has a heal that he can put onto his beasts, keeping them on the battlefield a lot more. This means his first turn, he can conjure an animal. His second turn, he can unleash the beast on them to buff them and heal them. And it overall just gives him way more effect on the battlefield and just way more power. Now, in addition to all that, although you guys can't see it here, which is a bit unfortunate, if the Wild Speaker now reaches champion rank, instead of summoning a tier 1 unit, he will now summon a tier 2 animal unit, making him once again scale way better and be way more powerful as the game continues. With all that said, all supports now do more at champion rank, which I'll get into a bit later. But it just means the Wild Speaker, we spend a lot of time on this Wild Speaker, this unit scales significantly better. He's way more powerful, and tier 2 units have really struggled to seek any sort of viability. So the Wild Speaker being this strong is definitely a good thing. Now, Call Wild Animal is another buff that has happened from the developers. Once you use Call Wild Animal, you will then get a choice of 3 to 4 animals depending on the terrain you summon it on. So if you summon it on ice terrain, you will get a very significant chance of getting the very powerful Ice Spider. Now, the more powerful the unit you want to summon from it, the more it will cost. This also allows us to consistently summon down tier 2 units, because you'll always get seemingly one choice of tier 2 units. So you click the spell, you summon it down, and then you can pay an additional mana cost for a tier 2 unit, or you can just choose whichever tier 1 unit that you actually wanted. This makes Call Wild Animal way more consistent, as you can, well, consistently pull animals that you can actually evolve. This allows you to actually do beast builds where you can focus on evolving your animals. Although, you know, whether or not you want to use a Tome Evolution, I guess it's on you. Anyway, Call Wild Animal is just way more consistent, and additionally, you can get tier 2 animals out of it, which it's a tier 1 Tome summoning a tier 2 unit, which is kind of unheard of. Okay, then we're going to talk about the Tome of Cycles, because I think this one, not directly interacting with beasts, has a lot of changes. The one change I'm going to focus on here is Blades of Decay. Projectiles of Decay is now Blades of Decay. Instead of affecting range units, it now affects melee units. Decay did receive a rework where it now removes 100% healing at 4 stacks rather than 100% healing at 1 stack, so you do need to stack it up 4 times. But Blades of Decay automatically puts decaying on enemies. It also enchants every single melee unit, including the Wild Speaker summon animal, any animal, in fact, that you summon. This means that Blade of Decay is a great way for animal builds to debuff enemies, causing a little bit of damage, not too much, but just totally shredding away all their health and just being a giant, well, you remove all their health. I mean, I don't know what to say. They can't heal, right? Parting Gifts, of course, comes from Tome of Cycles, although not that usable, because using an entire turn to cast this isn't too great. Dudo Cycle, like all support units, if Dudo Cycle gets champion rank, her Restart the Cycle has been buffed if she gets champion rank. She needs to get champion rank, you don't just get this for free. But if you do, it heals 100 hit points or brings the target back with 100% of its total hit points. This, combined with all the buffs to beasts, allows Dudo the Cycle to be a late game unit that can use Sacrificial Blight, allowing her to kill your summoned animals, so they will revive with your tier 5 spell, because if they time out, they disappear. If they get sacrificed, then they stay dead on the battlefield and can be revived. Little trick for you there. But the Dudo Cycle can then sacrifice your summons, and then use Restart the Cycle, and are actually good units. This means Dudo Cycle is a very good unit to just kind of keep this build getting into the late game, right? Tome of Vigor has received a buff as well. Call Greater Animal has received the same change from the Tome of Beasts. You can now choose 3 to 4 different units depending on the terrain, and you will always seemingly get one choice of a tier 4 unit. This means that beast builds can now actually consistently summon tier 4 units. Huzzah! Tome of the Wild also received a big buff. It now instantly summons one of its 3 beasts when you deploy it. So rather than having to wait 1 turn and it potentially dying, you put down the Totem of the Wild, it summons a beast, then it lasts for 2 turns instead of 3. You still get 3 animals in total, but you get them 1 turn quicker, which is extremely invaluable. And as you might imagine, these summons will always be tier 1 or tier 2, which means that if you sacrifice them, their dead body will stay on the field for you to revive with your tier 5 spell later. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain it a little bit. Okay. Totem of the Wild is now just significantly, it's way better tempo and allows you to spam summons onto the field. The tier 4 spell, in case you don't know, it's mass rejuvenation. All dead animals and plants are brought back to life, but if a summon times out, their body disappears. If a summon dies, their body stays on the field. So ironically, killing your own animals is how you save their life. Let that one wrap around your head. Force of Nature and a lot of other damage enchantments did receive a little bit of a nerf, but in total, the build is still significantly way stronger despite that. Now, the reason that this build went from, beasts got buffed, they got buffed and they're doing a little bit better. The reason it went from that to, oh wow, this is actually a really hard tempo build, is a change to Mighty Meek. Mighty Meek now affects tier 1 and tier 2 units, no longer has gold upkeep, and gives you status resistance. Since most animals that you summon from Wild Speaker and from Tome of the Wild are tier 1 or tier 2, and the animals that you summon from your Master of Nature affinity skill are also tier 2, this means Mighty Meek affects a lot of your board. Like, a lot of your board. Almost all summons are now affected by Mighty Meek, which, as you might imagine, the build that most abuses summons is significantly buffed up then by Mighty Meek. Big buff. And that status resist change and the reduction of gold upkeep just helps Mighty Meek be better. It's just way, way, way better. Now, how then can we combine these into an actually viable build? Well, there was one more change, which I'm tentative on. Sometimes I use Tome of Faith, sometimes I use Tome of Cryomancy, but I just want to talk about the Tome of Faith and what changed with it. It now has a Summon Lesser Light Spirit. Now, because the Shepherd Ambition affects plants, animals, and elementals, this means that the Summon Lesser Light Spirit, which is a new Light Spirit, a support unit that can heal allies and remove their negative effects, it upgrades to the Giga Light Spirit, which heals the most of any unit in the game and is a monster of healing. He's just a really big healer. This means that Tome of Faith can allow your Wild Speakers to get Staves of Mending. It can allow you to summon some healers down to keep your animals alive in fights. Tome of Faith is definitely an option right now, but let's get into then what the actual build would be using everything that we just learned. Now, this is a little bit experimental. I'm going a few different ways with it, but the way right now that I think it's most powerful is by using traits. You can now, in the beta, take a flaw. The flaw I'm taking, it did get nerfed. It was originally morale loss was increased by 25%. It got nerfed. Now morale gain is also reduced by 25%. So it's a little bit of a... I mean, it's obviously a drawback, right? But the idea with this build is to primarily fight on the front line using our beasts. So our heroes will mostly be on the back line, where morale effects are significantly less impactful on them. To try to keep our heroes alive then, I took the traits Tough, Quick Reflexes, and Inner Radiance. Inner Radiance because a lot of things in this expansion do spirit damage now, so I figured I'd just kind of cock block these people, try to do spirit builds, which has been funny. Inner Radiance is of course a new trait coming out with the beta update that will be free for you guys. The build I did was Primal, as you can clearly see right here. Primal is pretty good. Let me change my camera over to this side so you guys don't get confused. We went with Glacial Mammoth. Now, I did try with Stormcrow at first, and I am torn. Both Stormcrow and Glacial Mammoth work for this build. It depends on if you want to play more for the early game or if you want to play more for the late game. That's because Stormcrow gives you the mana you need. Ice Spiders are the 60 mana for the summon spell, then an additional 80 mana to summon. It seems the developers very much understood that everyone wants Ice Spiders. Ice Spiders also did receive a small little nerf. It's actually a big nerf. Their Ice Web, in fact, all ice abilities in the game, if they fail to freeze enemies instead of slowing automatically, they will now give status vulnerabilities. So all these freeze abilities did get nerfed because frankly, it was a bit frustrating to have abilities that you literally could not resist the slow on. The Griffon Beta update does have a lot of balance changes that I think were very good for the game, and although some people call them nerfs, I think nerfs are good for the game, and in particular, sometimes things are just frustrating to fight, so it's good when they're nerfed. I mean, that's just right. So, Stormcrow, I would say, is better for the early game, and he's got Astral Affinity. Astral is good for this build, because when you get the Astral Affinity track, +1 rank to all magic summons, that affects everything you do here, basically. All Wild Speaker gets affected, Totem of the Wild gets affected, your Master of Nature summons get affected. If you have a little bell and you summon a Spider Matriarch, it gets affected. Your summon on the world map gets affected. So having some Astral Affinity and being on the Astral Affinity track is quite powerful. The Astral Affinity track is still the most powerful in the entire game. So a Stormcrow is, in my opinion, a very effective early game to mid game build for this. Glacial Mammoth, I would call, is more of the late game focus here. You start in the cold Arctic where you get the liquids. Liquids now only spawn in the cold Arctic. I really, really, really hope they revert that at some point. At either rate, that allows Glacial Mammoth to pick up those liquids. This gives you significantly more knowledge gain because liquids give you significantly more knowledge. This also allows you to get ice spiders, which in my opinion, there are 2 spiders. I think the vampire spider is quite good. The hunter spider is also quite good. The ice spider is quite good. All spiders are good. I love spiders. I mean, in real life, actually, I'm kind of ambivalent to spiders in real life. I've seen so many spiders in my life. I coexist. I mean, I've coexisted with them in the past, I guess I should say. I mean, I've never really minded them so long as they stay away from me, right? It's always been kind of like, you know, you stay in the corner, you eat your bugs, don't come near me, and we're cool. I don't know if anybody else is like that with spiders. At any rate, Stormcrow, of course, does give you that grassland walk. Moving through grassland at 4 points is outrageously powerful. A lot of people seriously underestimate this. In addition, Stormcrow gives you that mana you will need to be spamming summons all game. Glacial Mammoth, on the other hand, although it doesn't give you mana, so you might not be able to summon as many ice spiders as you want, gives you a lot of production. That production allows you to set up your cities significantly quicker. I mean, even having 3 population would then give you 9 production, so you can imagine this is going to ramp up quite quickly. And again, those liquids give you more knowledge, which lets you scale. And importantly, if you go with this and you get more Shadow Affinity, you can then go with a Tome of Cryomancy, and with 3 Shadow Affinity, you can get Death Magic, which will allow you to get effectively unlimited casting within a battle. You can get Death Magic in a reasonable time. With Stormcrow, unfortunately, even going Tome of Cryomancy second, you don't have room to go with a second Shadow Tome, so you will not get Death Magic in any reasonable time. So you'll just have to run without Death Magic, which is fine. I mean, if you win the game, no one fights back because they're dead, right? So, I mean, sometimes winning the game is good for winning the game, I've found. At either rate, for this build, I'm going to shoot Glacial Mammoth, because I know you guys always greed so hard over late game builds, and it upsets me. Okay, now for society traits, I've found myself torn on these really hard. You did see a Giant King Leader. I think that's probably actually better as an Eldritch. I definitely think Eldritch is a bit stronger for this build. I'll get it. We don't really want to do major race transformations. We want to do the Beast one, and we could maybe fit in super growth if we have some extra world casting points. But most of our world casting is good at spamming spells, spamming summons, and just keeping huge tempo plays, wiping out opponents and winning the game, right? So it's not often that we can just sink 5 or 6 turns into casting a major race transformation. That's a bit rough, right? At any rate, Mana Channelers does work if you have an Eldritch Lord. If you want to just go with the champion, I originally played this build with the champion Lord. I do actually think Wizard King would be better, though, unfortunately, because Wizard King, this build is really hungry for the global casting, which is why I wanted to stay with Astral Affinity to begin with, to get more global casting from the Astral Affinity track. But the Magic Origin unit's getting 20% more experience. That will affect every animal you summon, not build, I don't think, but at least the ones you summon. It's a bit complicated. I don't even know how it works sometimes. This will also affect elementals, allowing you to evolve up to Giga Light Spirits who heal 60 HP. Seriously, it's a lot. I hope they don't. They already did a Giga nerf on Life Spirit, so I don't think they'll do a second one. They might, but you never know. I mean, for now, it seems fine. Really strong, but, you know, non-racial units kind of have to be strong, right? So mana channelers, now this doesn't affect the second part of the summon. So when I use Ice Spider, it's going to cost a bonus 80. That's not reduced by this. I think maybe that could be changed, but I don't have high hopes for it. So that basically means instead of paying 60 mana, you're going to pay 30 plus 80. So it's still going to be 110 to summon an Ice Spider. At any rate, I think the XP has been kind of okay. At least for me, the extra XP did okay. And if you go with an Eldritch Lord, then you're going to get that 20% experience on your Eldritch Lord because he counts as a magic origin unit. Fabled Hunters is just generally good. It's just outrageously good. Also, this build just plays really hard for the early game. So Fabled Hunter, this just allows me to take every fight. I often, instead of combining my heroes, I'll have 2 different hero stacks clearing. You know, I sometimes I go with 2 in the same. It really depends on the map, right? At any rate, it's pretty strong. I'll actually go into heroes later. There is one reason to keep your heroes together, even with this build, and it's something I use. Tome of Beasts is pretty obvious. I mean, we're doing a beast build, right? Now, I was trying with Ice Giant. Don't pay attention to this too much. It's not too important. At either rate, I went Warlock. That's a new class, also a new class in the beta. I also, for my race, now I thought this was really cool and really well done. I made them like cheetahs, because I made them felines, and then I gave them the little tattoo and I colored them. I thought this turned out really well. I'm just showing off. I'm just hoping you guys appreciate my work. I thought these guys ended up looking like a beast race. I thought it just looked really nice. That's all I have to say. Okay, let's talk about our Tome Path then. How do I do that? Really easily. How do I do that really easily? Because in the beta, you now have advanced settings when you make your faction, which includes an AI Tome Path, which is really useful, of course, for allowing you, the player, to actually make a Tome Path that you can then follow in game yourself and make sure that it all works out. Actually, a great change. Lovely, lovely, lovely change. Love this change. Okay, so starting tome, Tome of Beasts. Second tome in this build would be Tome of Cryomancy. Otherwise, I would actually go with potentially Tome of Evocation, Tome of Faith. I would probably, Tome of Faith gives you the Abbey, which is really strong to have that because nature loves spamming farms, right? And I've had those Abbeys giving me like 20, 25 knowledge, which is, you know, quite a lot for just one special province improvement, right? So Tome of Cryomancy to get the School of Cryomancy. If you're going with the astral track of this, I would go Tome of Evocation, or say not Tome of Evocation, Tome of Faith to get the Light Spirit to heal. Third choice, if you don't care about knowledge at all, then you can go Tome of Evocation to fast track down the Astral Affinity. Now the only problem with that is you're not going to have any special province improvement research centers, what do they call them, research posts. Now that can screw you over on bad RNG. I just always like to have one in my tomes, at least one. 2 is great, but 1 I would consider practically mandatory because otherwise you can get totally screwed sometimes and it's just not fun. Now, Tome of Revelry, I went 3rd. That's because Tome of Revelry gives us Blood Fury weapons. That's just a good damage enchantment. We get Reveler's Heart, so our main faction, like our leaders, can for the most part ignore the debuff we gave them. But most importantly is Blood Fury weapons combined with Revels of Carnage. Being able to cast a spell to get 30% more experience onto our stack. Now, do know the way that this works is you cast it onto a stack, and then every unit in that stack gets an unremovable buff that gives them 30% more experience for 3 turns. So you can move units in and out of a stack. You can put 2 heroes together, buff the stack, then move them apart if you want to get experience on your heroes. And of course, as I just mentioned, this does actually buff your heroes. So you'll end up with higher level heroes, particularly if you've got the Mana Channelers and Revels of Carnage, you can end up with a very high level Eldritch Lord. Alternatively, you can just play a champion, go for a Giga Food build, that works great. You could also go for a Wizard King and just get a lot of experience as a Wizard King, right? So then you can just unlock all your stuff. Either way, they're all fine, they're all good. I think Eldritch might be best in this build. I'll show you why with Warlock in a second. So, Tome of Revelry, I just find this is like the only tome that exists for Chaos. Chaos really, realistically, has 2 tomes. They have Pandemonium and they have Revelry, and Pandemonium's hard to obtain because no one wants 3 Chaos Affinity. So realistically, the only Chaos Tome that exists is Revelry. Please buff Chaos. Up next, we have Tome of the Beacon. Now, I went Revelry before Beacon to, of course, unlock Revels of Carnage, because that would allow us to... Remember these spiders, these ice spiders we like? They're going to go into Ice Spider Matriarchs and be absolute Giga Beasts, and this helps us unlock them a bit quicker. Now, do, of course, remember, when you do get Spider Matriarchs, they will have a 3 Imperium upkeep, so you just need to be a bit wary of that, because if you evolve a bit too many, you could find yourself not having Imperium. What I would recommend to do to kind of offset that upkeep is clear wonders, take every wonder. You can take silver wonders, you can take even gold wonders. If you have a bunch of Spider Matriarchs early on, it's pretty easy. In addition, if you get the Mighty Meek, your summons will just absolutely shred the enemy. And of course, with this build, the Warlock becomes a damage beast, despite not actually dealing any damage himself, which I get to in a second. After that, Tome Cycles. Now, why do we like Tome Cycles? Of course, the Blades of Decay allows us to completely shut off enemy healing, so some builds can heal so much that your lower damage beasts can't kind of swarm and overwhelm them because they're just going to be healing a lot. Blades of Decay says no. It's actually quite brutal. I'm not sure if this is going to get out of the beta in the way it is now. It doesn't add damage, but man, you can just shut healing off. You can tell the healing no. They can't heal if you don't let them. And of course, we got the Dudo Cycle, who, as I mentioned, we can sacrifice our units to force them to die, which of course allows us to revive them later on with the tier 5 spell. And restart the cycle is really good, because if we just happen to lose our Lord or a unit we don't want to die in a bad situation, we can sacrifice a unit and next turn just pop them back up. So that's pretty good right there. Blooming Projectiles looks way better on paper than it is, unfortunately. It's got a 60% chance to apply Life Seed. Life Seed does no damage. It's just a debuff that when that unit dies, it heals 1 unit on your side for 20 HP. It's not really that exciting. You also deal 10% more damage against decaying units. It's honestly, I suspect Blooming Projectiles might be buffed, but it just might not be buffed. I don't know. At either rate, it's kind of forgettable. Cycle of Seasons can now be put on enemy cities as well. This gives you a bit more tempo. This is why you need all that world map casting, because when you're about to take a big battle in an enemy city, you can slap Cycle of Seasons down on their city, so then you get the cycle in their domain, which is pretty strong. Because Decay is now in 4 stacks instead of 1, Diffuse Health only giving 2 decaying is not really as strong as you might think. It is still a decent kind of spell for just proccing AoE regeneration, but it's a 2 hex range and it's on enemy units, so it's kind of hard to position to get the regeneration. The Tome of Fertility's got the much superior regeneration spell. It does a little bit of damage, it does heal you a little bit. It's not bad, and in some situations this might end up being your best spell if you were to get it at Tome 4, but realistically, once you get Totem of the Wild, practically every spell you cast from now on will be Totem of the Wild. So let's move on then from Tome of Cycles to Totem of Vigor. Of course, for those of you guys who don't know, Empowered Beast gives every animal 10 hit points, Demolisher, decreased number of units in the formation, so they take less, they don't get their damage reduced as much. If they get AoE'd, they have less units, so they don't take as many casualty damage reduction. And then a 20% damage modifier, so your animals stay relevant. Realistically, your animals are going to stay relevant until late game. Definitely Tome of Vigor, pretty strong. And as I just mentioned, Totem of the Wild, this is your bread and butter. After you engage on the enemy, after you spam summons all around them, after you completely swarm them to death, Totem of the Wild is what you will be using. You'll put this kind of near the battlefield if you've properly gotten some ranks on it, or even if you haven't. It's 80 HP, 4 defense, 2 resistance, and it automatically summons instantly. So you can summon it down, throw that unit to the enemy, and kind of keep the totem pretty close to the battle, because if they turn and try to kill the totem, then all your units just get to beat the crap out of them. And if they don't kill the totem, then next turn you get another beast. And then, of course, next turn you can summon a second totem, and then a third totem. It's very overwhelming. I did play a game on it. I was kind of laughing. It can become quite difficult for your enemies to keep up with you. Unleash the Beast gives 1 animal 5 strength and 5 bolstered defense in Berserk. It's, yeah, not really that amazing. Call Greater Animal is, of course, the obvious choice here. Now, sometimes you still want to summon down those rank 2 animals and level them up to save on Imperium, at least until they level up, and save some mana, save some global combat casting, or I should say global casting, because Summon Wild Animal, I think, is like 45 global casting. This one's 150, so you could summon 3 level 2 animals versus 1 level 4, and then you could try to evolve them. That's just something to keep in mind. Other than that, I would go Super Growth. Now, if you're just swimming in global casting, you can do Super Growth. It will basically do nothing for your build other than it will just give you some hit points for heroes. Now, hit points for heroes isn't bad. That keeps them alive. Okay. Next up is Tome of Nature's Wrath. Now, there's Tome of Paradise and there's Tome of Nature's Wrath. Why do I prefer Tome of Nature's Wrath then? Because Tome of Paradise is really outrageously effectively powerful at locking down a location, your cities, and reaching the expansion win condition and forcing them to attack into you when they have no hope of possibly winning on the attack due to Fortress of Vines. This build, it focuses more on the military victory condition. We don't really want to be defending, we want to be attacking. In addition, I did mention changes to plants. What are those changes? Those are the animate flora. We need to go all the way to the floral stinger. Now, do remember, not every buff, but some buffs to beasts will also apply to plants. Some buffs, yeah, it's like, remember Shepherd from your ambitions, that will apply to plants, elementals, and animals. Force of Nature will also apply to plants. Floral Stinger is also tier 2, so he gets affected by Mighty Meek. Now, the summoned Horn God from the Tome of Nature's Wrath. I would call the Tome of Nature's Wrath, this is basically just the Summon Horned God Tome. That's really all it does. All the other spells are pretty crap, if you want me to be real. So if you just want to go Tome of Paradise, just go Tome of Paradise. But I found Summoned Horn God. Now, he has 300 global casting, but he got another buff indirectly. Now, he did get a bunch of buffs in last expansion, but now the Floral Stinger, as you might have seen, has seen significant buffs. It is no longer slow. That means it can retaliate. That means it can move more. Poisonous Spores, its range attack, had its cooldown completely removed, so it can Poisonous Spores every single turn, and its melee strike went from 10 damage to 13 damage. So the free action Animate Flora just became another unit with Mighty Meek to add to your board that's just being a pain in the ass for your enemies. On cooldown 2, you can continuously keep an Animate Flora up so long as there are bushes around, which there typically are. Additionally, this guy gets Wild Eruption, which just creates vines. We're just creating even more shit for the enemy to deal with, so they can never actually deal with anything. Then Reclaiming Bolt gives us not a lot of damage, but some damage, and some healing for adjacent people. So overall, I went the Tome of the Nature's Wrath, and these Horn Gods just proved to be diabolical. Once I had 2 down, and I could Wild Eruption twice on my engagement turn, it was basically impossible for my enemies to react. They had to kill the vines, they had to kill the beasts, they had to somehow reach my totem, which was in the back, and so many people just got very overwhelmed by this. And of course, the action economy advantage of being able to summon down a Floral Stinger for free, which was the buff you received last expansion, just means we're getting another tier 2 unit who's just going to be applying a lot of damage, eventually buffed by Force of Nature. Now, for my 7th tome, I went Tome of Prosperity. Now, I do think Tome of Prosperity is just generally one of the better tomes in the game. Summon Prosperity Dragon did get a nerf this expansion, where his Reign of Prosperity is cooldown 2 rather than cooldown 1. I never summoned the Prosperity Dragon, I didn't really need him. All I wanted was Blessed Armors to make every single beast I summoned even more tanky, which just made me a giant pain in their ass, and 2, for Stabs of Grace, so that my support units could just spam Grace on all my units by just applying infinite health onto the front line and having infinite decays. It just became a huge pain for my enemies. Shrine of Prosperity continues to be an amazing way to convert food into an actual valuable late game resource. There is a soft cap on pop on your cities at 20. So once you get to about 20 pop on your cities, you can continue to increase it, but there's like a pretty rough soft cap. At that point, you can put down Shrine of Prosperity. This allows you to generate significantly more gold. Gold isn't really that big an issue for this build. It's more mana, which Garden of Affluence gives you. Gold and mana, in fact. Garden of Affluence is a building that for every farm or forester in your domain, you get gold and mana. This generally, Tome of Prosperity is just a really good way to turn late game food, farm, forester builds into builds that just continue to scale into the late game. I've talked about this in my other videos. I just think Tome of Prosperity is absolutely perfect for nature. Order more so likes the Blessed Armor, Staves of Grace, Grand Protection. Nature likes all of those and Garden of Affluence and Shrine of Prosperity, and because those three things, Staves of Grace, Blessed Armor, Grand Protection, those are already good. Once you add in Garden of Affluence and Shrine of Prosperity, I just find this basically becomes an auto pick in any nature tome. It's just that good. It's just that good. Tome of Goddess of the Nature is when this build... This is when it reaches its culmination. If you don't win the game by this point, you're going to be in trouble because animals aren't racial. They won't scale indefinitely, but you do get one last big power spike. Force of Nature did get nerfed a little bit. It's still really good for sure, and this will just allow everything to deal a lot of damage. Mass Rejuvenation allows you to continuously resummon your field, and they did do one change. Mass Rejuvenation now restores people with one action point. So if you do resummon people next to an enemy, you will be able to attack them. That was done because they made breaking bodies easier. It's much easier to destroy corpses, but now reanimating is slightly better. It's kind of like a Magic the Gathering approach. Make something stronger, but then make its counter stronger. This build loves to kill its own units with the Druids of the Cycle, and then be able to force resummon them as well. That's also where the death magic can come in really hard. That's basically the entire build, except for one last little bit of detail. In the beta, I hope this doesn't get changed because it helps things a lot. You can now choose up to 15 heroes, but if you choose 3, the heroes that you can recruit will always be amongst these 3. This allows you to set up the AI that you fight to have better actual comps. It also sets you up to be able to have a more consistent roster. So instead of just randomly getting screwed on the class and screwed on the governor of the hero you want, you can actually take good ones. So I have an ambition, automatic elitist, so my Lord will be decently tanky in fights, and Governor agricultural, because agricultural in a nature build goes pretty wild. So elitist will just automatically renown. I can get that up to renown level 4 by turn 30 to 40, at which point the city will grow immeasurably quickly. Yeah, and this guy will also be class Warlock. We're not going to talk about the other two. As you might imagine, there's scholar ambitions and then some classes. I just wanted to flesh out my build. Now, why did I mention all of this? Oh my god, it bugs if you go into that. So,
your journey starts.
If I could go into a game really quick, I'm going to show you the Warlock, and I'm going to show you why the Warlock takes this build from, yeah, it's a pretty cute build, to, oh my god, I hate you. Because this build has a special little trick that the Warlock can do. The Warlock is a new class focused on debuffing enemies and summoning up friends. Undead friends. Zombies, in fact. 2 of them at the start of every battle that aren't time limited. Now, while these zombies normally wouldn't really be that big a deal and wouldn't even be scary, and you probably wouldn't even care about them, the zombies in this build, as you've probably deduced, these zombies are tier 1. Which means they get Mighty Meek. Which means they get every enchantment. They even get Blessed Armors. These 2 zombies that we summon for free at the start of battle are diabolical. They absolutely can, if you have 2 Warlocks, you can always have 4 zombies in the front that will tank for you as the opening stages of combat, generally be a quite literal wall of meat that can force enemies back into corners and give you insane map pressure. Additionally, the Warlock has a secondary thing right here, unstable summons. Summoned units gain decaying dissolution. Whenever your summons die, which includes your 2 zombies, which includes if you have any summon items, which includes your Master of Nature summons. Whenever units summoned by this unit die, All adjacent enemies suffer 15 blight damage and 2 decaying. Not only does this keep even more decaying pressure on the field, where enemies will be constantly decaying and unable to heal, but it just causes even more damage pressure. So the Warlock just becomes outrageously frustrating in how I use him. We use 2 Warlocks to begin with. That's 4 zombies once we get them leveled. They will rue the day they ever fought you. Additionally, we've got this Claim Soul spell. Now, between Raise Undead and Claim Soul on 2 different Warlocks, this gives us a lot of control on bodies as well. Claim Soul if Claim Soul kills an enemy, you revive it back on your side, and Raise Dead just raises dead. Both of these can be used to either deny your enemy bodies or destroy bodies, which means that if you are using this build and you do fight a late game enemy using death magic to indefinitely revive their field, this actually gives you lots of options on removing those bodies so that you don't just get eventually grinded out of the battle. You yourself, if you use the astral version, won't have unlimited mana, although if you do conserve your mana, you should be able to get at least 2 or 3 good revives in. But this build, it's got a couple weaknesses into the late game because, of course, animals aren't racial, so they will stop scaling at a certain point, or at the very least stop scaling as hard. But I would say this build, you've got all the different animals you summon, you've got the zombies, which are cool, you've got warlocks, which is a cool new class. Some people say Warlock is underpowered, and I don't entirely disagree, but the zombie aspect is quite powerful. His strongest aspect is the zombies and the unstable summons, which we use grotesquely. We very much abuse and use those. The rest of this, particularly the blood pack side of it, is a bit not great, and maybe the devs could work on that a little bit to make that a little bit better. The curse aspect as well. Curse doesn't scale with your weapon or anything like that, so it just doesn't do much damage. Overall, it's just the Warlock, I would say he's mostly a summoner with some sort of debuffs, which is obviously what the devs intended. Some people say he's underpowered. I don't think he's underpowered. Some people say he's not as strong as other classes. I could understand that argument. Some classes are pretty strong right now. Either way, I don't think the Warlock is weak. I mean, and definitely the way we use him is quite abusive, right? So I definitely think the double Warlock, the 4 zombie opener, every zombie getting Mighty Meek is just quite devastating for enemies. And again, you can go with the Giant King, the Frost Giant King. You can use Provinces of Snow or Ice, provide mana. You can use that to provide all the mana you need. Or you can go with an Eldritch Lord, just because you want to go with an Eldritch Lord. Now, of course, if you do decide to go with the Frost Giant, you do start with 1 more animated weapon here. Should you want, and I'm not saying you have to, you could go down here and make it a permanent animated ice bow. The animated ice bow would then just be sitting back at 4 range, plunking away at enemies with Mighty Meek. I think this gets enchantments, but actually, now that I think about it, it might have been changed to not. Shoot. Someone should check that. Anyway, that's the entire build. So make sure to like, make sure to comment, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you, everybody, and tell me what you think about this build, or give me any suggestions you have for this build, or tell me, actually, does this summon get enchantments? Because now I'm drawing a blank. I don't think it does now. I might be being dumb. At any rate, Frost Giant still gets some other cool stuff, so it's not a total loss, right? Like, you still get access to... Where is it? Basic attacks, Rune of Protection, immunity of Frozen is quite good. Why am I crazy? Anyway, I don't know. I'm looking for some. I'm like not seeing it. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.